Okay, today, let's start on Amar Rav Huna on Kufayin Daled 174a. It's about 5 lines from the top. We thank Hashem that they're able to learn Torah every day. And this chassav learning we have Beis Mikdash immediately. Learning the Nishmas of Golda Basra Yamin, Salsa Ben Zion, before Shleim of Abindav Ben Sarah, and Talia gets all the husband and my father, and Mirta Meidel. Yamar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, you remember we're discussing over here the difference between a guarantor called an Ariv and a Kablan, who is another type of Ariv, but he's more more of a guarantor than a regular Ariv. What we learned before was that you can approach the Kablan before even approaching the borrower. The explanation for that was the Kablan was instructing the lender to give the money, as if the lender became his messenger to give money, and the Kablan's going to pay the lender, as if he's the borrower, as if he was the one you're lending money to him, but I'm the one that's borrowing it, as if he's not actually borrowing it, but it's as if that's what he's saying. Okay, so Rav Huna says, Rav Huna is a student of Rav, second generation Amira. He says, Hilveyo vani arev, if the guarantor tells to the lender, he says, lend so-and-so money. Let's say he tells to Reuven, lend Shimon money, vani arev, and I'll be the guarantor. Hilveyo vani pareya, lend him, this is with all different expressions here, lend him and I will pay it back. If the borrower doesn't pay it back. He's saying he'll pay it back, but he means after you approach from the borrower. If he doesn't, I'll guarantee it. Lend to him and I'll be obligated to pay. It says nice and supposed to say etain. Lend him and I will give. It means I will pay back. Kulon lashon arbasim. All of those are expressions of a guarantor. And a guarantor, we know the halachas of a guarantor that you first go to the borrower. If he doesn't have, you go to the guarantor. Ten leivani kablan. Let's say he uses a different expression. He says, give to him, and I will be a kablan. I will be the type of guarantor. He uses the guarantor of the stronger guarantor. You can come to me first. Ten leivani pareya. Give to him and I will pay it back. Ten leivani chayev. Give to him and I will be chayev. The nuance here is that he's not saying hilvehu, lend to him. He's saying give to him. When he says give to him, we're in Kufayin Dalet. Yeah. He says give to him, so then he's doing a mission. He becomes like a shliach of the guarantor. He's like sending him on a mission. You lay out the money, and I'll pay you back. Ten leivani chayv, give to him, and I'll be obligated. Ten leivani etain, it's supposed to say. Kul lashon kablanas, and all of those are kablanas. Kablanas is the stronger type of guarantor. Now, what we learned here is that the term halvehu, to lend, turns him into an arev. The term tenlai turns him into a kablan. That's what we learned. Now, of course, what he says afterward, there's the way that he instructs the lender, and then there's what he says, what his obligation will be. If he says, Hilveyo vani arv, so then he said it exactly in the way of arvas. If he says, ten lai vani kablan, give to him, he said it exactly as a kablan. That's exactly the language as the kablan. Problem is, they asked the question, Hilveyo vani kablan, let's say he mixed up the language. When it came to the way that he should lend the money, he says, Helveyu, lend it. Looks like he's making him into an Ariv, making himself into an Ariv. Then he says, Vani Kablan, but I'll be Kablan. Tenlai, if he says Tenlai, that's the way that a Kablan talks. He's instructing the lender to lend it. Vani Ariv, but I'll be an Ariv. So when you mix these up, which one do you get? What's the din? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says lashon arvas, lashon kablanis. You have to look at the last word. If he says that he's an ariv, then he's an ariv. If he says he's a kablan, he's a kablan. Doesn't matter how he instructed the lender. Yeah, that's what it appears. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak. Okay, and all of this was based on the opinion of Rav Huna. However, Rav Chisda Amar, Rav Chisda argues with Rav Huna. We're going to have Rav Huna, Rav Chisda, and Rava here. Chisda says, Kul Lashon Kablana, saying, all of those expressions above were all an expression of Kablanas. Bar Mehalveya Vaniyarv, except if he says both expressions. In other words, the default, according to Rav Chisda, is that the guarantor becomes a Kablan. Remember, the difference between a Kablan and an Ariv is who you collect from first. If you by an Ariv, you have to go to the borrower. If he doesn't have money, you can go to the cosigner. By the Kablan, you can go to either one you want. You can go to the cosigner before the borrower. And the term is the way that it's set up is that the Kablan is instructing the lender to lend. It's as if you lend for me and I'll pay you back.
Oh, okay.
So it's as if he's borrowing in a way. That's where you can collect from him. It says you lay out the money for so and so. It means he's accepting on himself something. Maisha, what's the word kablan? What is he accepting? Kablan. We use the term kablan also for a type of worker when he does kablanis. When he's a contractor, it's called the kablan. Right. Kablan is a contractor. Here we're using it as a type of guarantor. Over there, the kablan meant that he was accepting on himself the full job. He's not getting paid by the day. That was the difference in Hilchah Shabbos. Remember the kablan. Shabbos, if you're a kablan, you have more leniencies because I can finish it whenever I want. About the non-Jewish worker, the independent contractor, let's call the kablan. Okay. Here the guarantor is called. Kablan's getting the full responsibility. That's what it means. Yeah. Okay. So Rav Chisda says the default is that he's a kablan unless he uses both terms that he's an ariv. Hilveyu vani ariv, that would be both terms. What you should do is to lend the money, and I will be an ariv, and I will. Okay. Rava says kol lashon arbasin. All of them are expressions of arbas, the opposite. The default is not a kablan. The default is an ariv. Bar miten layavani naisen. Unless he says both expressions of a kablan. Now, of course, if he says ten layavani kablan, of course. But even if he says give to him and I will give to you, that's the only one that's going to be a kablan. According to Rabbi, he has a more lenient opinion that on the guarantor puts him as in the level of an ariv more often. Okay, I saw somewhere that the halacha is like Rabbi. I think I saw in the Rashbam. Rashbam wrote, "The kaimalan kerava dehu Basra." We're going to pass him like Rava because he's the later opinion. Yeah, there's a rule in Shas, halacha kebasroi. I don't know if it's in Shas. It's in the Rishonim for sure. Yeah, that the halacha is like the later opinion.
Well, the strange thing about becoming a guarantor is you don't need a kinyan. Just words is enough.
Uh-huh.
The theory is that whoever's guaranteeing gets a na from it. So so it seems like you'd want to make darn sure that the words, if you're going to become a kabbalah, darn sure that that's really what he means. So it seems like the fallback position that, to my way of logic, would be the weaker form, unless the person's really specific, because as I say, it's all about words.
Wow. So are you sure there's mamish no kinyan at all? By the weddings, the other doesn't lift anything up?
No kinyan.
Wow. That's what the Gemara meant before. That says, how is he meshabed himself? It says the fact that you're trusting him, that's the benefit. So that what the Gemara was asking him, because we don't do a kinyan. It's important. Okay.
There's certain types of loan that is, like, for example, insured by the government. So if the person defaults, the government takes over the loan. The bank
And
has nothing to worry
that's a
about.
type of guarantee.
The bank has nothing to worry about.
Hillel's telling me about an insured loan that's insured by the government. So that's a type of guarantee, which is an arev. You don't go to the government first. The guy defaults, then
Yeah, it's a guarantor.
okay. The Gemara now says like this. Amar le Mar Baramemar le Ravashi. Mar Baramemar says to Ravashi, Hachi Amar Abba. My father said the following. This is Mar Baramemar's father, Amemar. Amemar was a friend of Ravashi. He says, Ten levani noisein, ein lamalva laleva klum. That if he says ten levani noisein, if he uses that expression, give to him, and I will pay, I will give back, which is the expression of a kablan, then he can't even go to the borrower. Ein lamalva laleva klum. There's no borrower that needs to pay. He goes straight to the kablan. It says v'loihi. It's not so. This doesn't exempt the borrower. Of course, you can collect from the borrower. The only way you would exempt the borrower from paying is if the kablan took the money from the malva, from the lender, and handed it to him. Then the kablan would be the one that actually borrowed. But of course, you can go to the borrower just like you can go to the kablan. When does he not go to the borrower? That would only be if the kablan actually got the money and handed it. That would be like the kablan taking the loan. Of course, in all of these cases, he goes back to the borrower and collects his money. Right? In all of these cases, that's obvious.
There's no difference between the kablan and the cosigner.
And the arev?
If both you go first to the borrower.
No, it's not that you go first, but you can go. You can. The kablan is the rights to go to the kablan before the arev. Ahu daina the achte lamalva lenichse de loiva mekami de litve loiva. There was this judge that allowed the lender to go into the property of the borrower before they demanded the payment from the borrower. So he skipped a step. He said, go straight in and confiscate property. Salki Rav Chana Breder Rav Yeva. Rav Chana Breder Rav Yeva took him out of that. He told the guy he has to leave the property because you didn't ask the borrower first for repayment. You can't just confiscate things. Amar Rava said, Man chaken lemevet ki ha-milsa. Who is the wise man that understood to do such a smart thing? He loved Rav Chana Breder Rav Yeva. Must be Rav Chana Breder Rav Yeva. Because he holds nichse de barinish inan ma'arvin yaseh. A person's possessions are his guarantor. Right? That's what a mortgage you have. The possessions are the guarantor. One second, let's finish the sentence. Utanan, and was taught in a Mishnah, that if someone lends his friend with a guarantor, you don't go first to the guarantor. First, you go to the person. We established that you don't go first to the guarantor. First, you go to the borrower, and then you can collect. So here, he went first to the possessions. He went first to the guarantor. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. You have to go ask the person. Maybe the person wants to give money and not possessions. Who arva the yasmi, the pari lamalva makami de ladina liyasmi. There was a guarantor of orphans that paid up a debt from the orphans. And now he's coming to the orphans to collect the money that he paid up for them. The problem is the orphans are young children. So Amar Rav Papa says, Priyas Balchayv mitzvah. To pay up a debt is a mitzvah. The Yasmi lav b'nei mevad mitzvah ninu. And the orphans are not old enough to do a mitzvah. It's considered a milva al peh. It's considered a debt that they have to the guarantor is not a debt in a document. The debt in the document, that was that original loan. But now that they owe the guarantor, that's considered a milva al peh. And a milva al peh, you can't really collect from orphans until they're older. So you don't collect it. Well, that's the opinion of Rav Papa. He's a later Amira. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua is a friend of Rav Papa, same generation, towards the end of the Amiraim. He says, says, no. The reason why you don't collect from orphans is because it's possible that the father had designated like an escrow account from what to pay the debt for. And it could be that this is that the guy collected a second time from this guarantor, and now you're coming to collect. It could be that was already paid up.
Wow.
And the orphans, they didn't know all those details. They don't know their father's passwords to all his accounts, all of the which things he had and what he designated and what he told, and so it's even a problem if the lender himself shows up. If it's a milval peh, the lender himself shows up and he wants to collect money from the orphans. It's possible that their father had designated money that the person has already access to, and now he's going to be collecting twice.
Kind of an honest guys.
Yeah. So, my benayu, what's the difference between Rav Papa and Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua? Benayu kishachayev maida. If the person before he passed away, he admitted that he didn't pay, and according to Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, it doesn't have to do with their age. It has to do with, we don't know if there was already a tzrari, if there was some escrow that. So then then he should be able to collect from the assignment, because we know that we don't have a concern that maybe it was paid up already. Inami deshamtu mes beshamti, or maybe if he refused to pay, and they put him in cherem, and he passed away while he was still in cherem. So obviously he hadn't paid it up. He didn't pay it up. So then they could collect from him. Okay, so that would be the machlekes between Rav Papa and Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua. Sholchu misam, they sent from Eretz Yisrael, shamtu mes beshamte. If someone passed away because they refused to pay the debt and they were put into cherem, and they passed away in that status of being in cherem, hilchasa Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, the halacha Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, that you can collect from minor orphans that are minors, right? Not minor orphans. Orphans that are minors, you can collect from them even though it's a milva al peh. Yeah, so the Gemara says Allah Chazak Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua. Meisvei, yeah.
Remember, a while ago, we talked about kind of there was a mitzvah for the Ghana that to pay back.
Right.
So, but I remember that didn't translate to the States.
Right.
But
Right. Only if it was an original object.
If they have the original.
Right.
But then here, this transfer.
Yeah, this is a loan. This is they owe money. Yeah. Yeah. Why did we say that that you don't pay it back? The father stole. Why did we say that the children don't have to? Did we say in every case the children don't have to pay back if the original object isn't there?
One that I remember is all they would pay back, and that didn't go follow to the kids. It didn't carry on to the kids.
If there's enough in the estate, they have to use the estate to pay it back, but they're not chiyuv out of their own funds.
I think there was one case where that was applicable, but I don't know if all cases were like that.
Yeah. It was a lot. I just remember.
Okay. They it says over here, Priyas Balchai Mitzvah. They said over from Reb Chaim that he said if paying back a debt is a mitzvah, so it says shlish b'mitzvah. You only have to use a third, pay an extra third for a mitzvah. So maybe you shouldn't have to pay back the whole debt. You only have to pay a third. Why do we say that you even take the what's it called off his back to pay, right? To pay a loan, you take the shirt off his back to pay up a debt. But if it's a mitzvah, then the halacha should be different. I think he answered that that it's different because the money that's in that person, when a shlish b'mitzvah means that you have a certain amount of money and how much you should be spending on a mitzvah, right? There's different approaches to shlish b'mitzvah. Doesn't mean a third of your money, or doesn't mean a third of the mitzvah you add for hiddur mitzvah. I think it's shlish, beautify. Anyway, whatever the case is, the over here the money that's owed to someone is not considered your money. So all of that, all of these laws of like how much money you spend and not more than this or all of that doesn't have to do with this because that money really belongs to someone else. It just happens to be in your account. Yeah, you follow?
Yeah, I just think it's funny that when that person gave the borrower the loan, that money was considered already spent.
Right.
It goes both ways.
Goes both ways, right? Yeah.
Money is in the account, it belongs to them.
Yeah. When it comes to paying it back, I guess that's how you live. Meisvei. The Gemara has a question. The guarantor that repaid a loan and ends up with the document because he repaid it. So the lender gives him the document, doesn't give it to the borrower because the borrower didn't pay it back. It was the guarantor that paid it back. So the one that ends up with the promissory note is the guarantor. So now he wants to go to the Yisaimim, to the orphans or to the borrowers to get his money. Eina goiva, he cannot collect from them until they grow up. And if on the document it says repaid, I've received this, then goiva, then he is allowed. Now, one second. If we follow Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, so then Mishkach Chayav Maida. Then how is he able to go and collect? They're orphans, they're minors, they're not old enough to do the mitzvah of repaying a loan. How is he allowed to collect? The answer is because the father admitted before he died that he did not pay up. And so now the guarantor is the one that paid it, so they owe it to him. El Rav Papa Kasha, but according to Rav Papa, that you never pay back the guarantor because could be it was already paid by the father. So why do the orphans now have to pay the guarantor? According to Rav Papa, no. According to Rav Huna Breder, I'm sure we're concerned that maybe the father paid it. According to Rav Papa, it doesn't have to maybe the father pays. It has to do with their underage. Where says Shani Hassam, that case is different. That's why he wrote on the document, I received payment from you because he wanted to make it into a milva b'shtar. Now the guarantor shows up by the orphans with that document. That's like a document that's like a debt with a document. Debt with a document is different. You are able to collect from Yisayim. It's only a milval peh. It's only a verbal loan that you can't collect from orphans. Hahu arva da'ivid kechavim. Okay, here is where you have a Jewish borrower, but a non-Jewish lender. The non-Jewish lender is Rockefeller, or whoever owns all the banks. And then there's a guarantor. There's a cosigner. So the the guarantor paid it before the non-Jew collected it from the borrower. That's how they work. They go to either one. They don't go to the borrower. They go to the cosigner, the non-Jewish lenders. I don't think it matters. It has to do with their laws. It doesn't have to do with idolatry. That's what it seems. It says idolater. But I think that's just an expression for a non-Jew because their laws are different.
These-
You think it's because he worships idols?
Both, at least in our school, we've seen both. Where they say
Right.
they're non-Jew, or they use idolater. Usually when it's idolater, it's the worship of idols.
Yeah, but in the logic over here, I'm not sure if that's going to matter.
So that's
Let's
a type,
see.
no?
Amalei Rav Mordechai le Rav Ashi. Rav Mordechai says to Rav Ashi, "Hachi Amar Avimi me'agrunim mishmei Rava." We have this teaching from Avimi me'agrunim in the name of Rava that afilu man damer cheshin litzrari, even according to the opinion that says that we're concerned that maybe it was paid back already, right? Maybe there was an escrow account from the borrower to the lender. Hani mili Yisrael. That's only if the lender would be a Jew. But by a non-Jewish lender, even the Basar Arbazal, since sometimes he goes first to the guarantor, we don't have to be concerned that maybe he had already paid it, because the borrower, of course, does not want the lender to collect twice. Since in our rules, first you go to the borrower, then if it's paid, if the borrower pays it, you can't go to the lender. You can't go to the guarantor. But in their rules, you can go to the guarantor before the borrower. So maybe what's going to happen is when he already had received the money from the borrower, and now he's going to the guarantor and collecting again, saying, I didn't go to the borrower yet. He lies. I didn't go to the borrower. I just want the money from you because I can collect from you first. So therefore, because of that, if there's a non-Jewish lender, the Jewish borrower would never give an escrow account to this person to collect from, because he may end up collecting twice. That whole concern of tzrari, where you designated funds for this payment, that's only if they're going to come to him first. Amar Lei, so Rav Ashi responds to Rav Mordechai. He says, no, Adarab, it's exactly the opposite. Even according to the other opinion that says we're not concerned that there was an escrow account here that was designated for this money. Hanimili Yisrael, that's only if the lender was a Jew. But if the lender was a non-Jew, even the dinayu basar arba azli, since their rule is that you first go to the guarantor, if the borrower himself didn't designate funds for it, he never would have accepted on himself to become a guarantor. So it must be that there were designated funds. On the contrary, here that's like totally opposite logic, polar opposites, difference here. Okay. Mishnah said, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that if someone guarantees a woman's ksuba, then when that husband and wife get divorced, they have to make a vow that they're never going to get remarried. Maybe this is just a trick to get the money from the ksuba. And this. Yeah, last night the rabbi said this. Said someone in his community had a 50-year anniversary, a golden anniversary. So there was like a kiddush, and I think anyway the guy stood up and showed, and he said, for 50 years, we never once thought about divorce. Murder, on the other hand. Okay. Me? 25.
Halfway there.
Halfway there. Is that what it's called? Silver? Yeah. Poop, right? If someone is a guarantor, so they have to take that vow. So we get into some interesting story over here. Moshe Bar Atzri, Arva de Ksubasa de Kalsehava. At the wedding of Moshe Bar Atzri's son, we're going to find out his name is Rav Huna. The father, Moshe Bar Atzri, took on himself to be the guarantor for his daughter-in-law's ksuba. It means for his son, for the debt that his son could have if they get divorced. Well, Rav Huna bereit Tzorva me'Rabbanan Havet. Rav Huna, the son of Moshe Baratzri, he was a yeshiva student. But the Chikale Melsi, he didn't have any money. Those days, he didn't have money. Meant starvation. Very, very tough, right? Amar Abaya says, Leka the nasal, the naspe eitzel, the Ravuna, the negarshe, the bisu, the tezel, the tigri, ksuba, me'avua, v'had nahadre. No one's willing to tell Rav Huna that he should divorce his wife, collect the ksuba from his father, and then remarry her. You have to help this guy out. Amar le Rava says, oh yeah, but it's not going to work anyway, because Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that you have to, the Bezdin is going to enforce a vow on them in front of the public, in front of 10 people, that it can never be annulled, that they can never get remarried again. This is not, you're setting them up for a problem.
Do that every time.
If there is a guarantor to the ksuba, then that's what they would have to do, because maybe it's a trick on the guarantor. Amalei Abaya. So Abaya says, I'm not familiar with this. Only thing that I'm familiar with is someone taking a vow, a Kohen that had married a divorcee had to take a vow that he would not do that again if he wants to go back to being a Kohen. That I saw once. He wanted to be a Kohen. They were the shul that he was in wasn't giving him aliyahs because he married a divorcee. He like violated his kahuna. So if he would, actually, I think in this case, I think he married it. No, he married a divorcee. I think that was the case, and then he had to take a vow that he's not going to do that. It wasn't in front of 10 people. It was just in front of the Bezdin, I think.
Yeah. He's not going to marry another divorce.
Yeah.
He's just married.
Yeah, and now when he divorced her, he took a vow that he wasn't going to do that again. Oh, and then he would be able to get an aliyah, I think. Amalei Abaya. Yeah, what do you do with a Kohen like that? Do you give him a Yisrael aliyah? You don't give him any aliyah? What do you do? Yeah. What do you do if he's the president of the show? Yeah, that's how things were in America, 50, 70 years ago. He starts his own show.
Yeah, no, it's under the show.
Yeah, that's how it happened. We had in Rhode Island, we had something like that. Had the president of the show, his wife wasn't Jewish, and
I was saying whoever works then.
So Amalei Abaya, Atu called him Megarish, Bebe Dina Megarish. Abaya says the Rav Huna doesn't have to get divorced in Bezdin. Get divorced out of Bezdin, and then they won't take the oath. The Kayan who turned out that Rav Huna was a Kayan. He can't divorce her and remarry her anyway. He doesn't need any vow. Amar Abaya says, I hope they didn't get divorced. Abaya says, after poverty goes more poverty. This is the expression. The poor get poorer, the rich get richer, and the poor get poorer.
Who says that?
Who says that? People. Abaya says people say that, right?
Like that. They know.
Yeah, this all the jokes, right? When Adam told it to Chava, she said, "I heard it already." What's the? Me Amar Abaya Hachi, did Abaya actually say that we should give this like conniving advice to this it's a little dishonest. Amar Abaya is a Rasha Aram. Who's a wicked conniving person? Zehamasi Eitz Limka ben Chasim Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Reb Shimon, there was a rule that we had before, and probably here in Bava Basra maybe. Yeah, we had it before here and in other places also, that if someone says, my property should go to you, but after you, I want it to go to someone else. That means that you could use it during your life, but afterwards I want it to go on to someone else, not to go to your inheritance, to go to someone else. So Reb Shimon ben Gamliel said that if the first person sells it, then the next person doesn't get it. So the Gemara said that anyone that gives that sort of advice, to remove it from the next person receiving it is considered a Rasha Aram, a wicked, conniving person. You shouldn't give that sort of advice. Tell it like finagle this situation. So here comes along Abaya and says, let's do this trick. Let's tell him to get divorced, then he'll get the money from the guarantor, who happens to be his father. Mari answers, B'noi shiny. Giving money to his son is different. That's not considered conniving. He wants to give it to his son. He just he doesn't he'll be happy that his son is going to collect the money, the ksuba money, and then remarry his wife. Oh, without the Cohen part. This is all before they found it. Right?
Can I just give it?
What does
Son
the
a
father
gift.
just give him the
The
money?
fathers don't give their son the gift. They want him to raise them to be a man.
Yeah, but not
Dividing-
like
You never had a
Ponzi
rich.
scheme.
You never had a rich father.
No, but this is like a
They
Ponzi
make you.
scheme.
They make you work hard.
Including a Ponzi scheme.
So he rather the son like, do this scheme on him than just give him a gift.
The poor. Sometimes the poor family, they're more generous with the kids than the rich family. The poor rich kid, the father won't give him anything because they want to train him to be. I worked hard. You should work hard, and the kid wants to grow up just like living in luxury, but the father refuses, and the poor kid, the father's giving him his last thing, Okay. Silver Marabun and shiny. Silver Marabun and shiny, and there's two reasons over here why it's different. Over here, one reason is because it's his son, and also because he's a yeshiva student that he wants to support. He wants to support him. So okay, the Gemara says va'arivu, but the problem is the father was a guarantor. But kaimal an ariv diksuba le'mishtabit. We've established that when they ask you at the wedding, can you be an ariv? That's just a formality. They can never go into you and collect. My answer is Kablan Hava. He wasn't a regular guarantor. He was a Kablan. Yeah, apparently, when they ask you at by the Tanoim, they say, okay, well, Arav Kablan mitzad the Chassan, the Arav this. And I don't think it means anything. I think it's just a formality. This makes sense that if you're a Kablan on the Ksuba, and even though the husband doesn't have money, he still is accepting on himself to pay it up. So then good, the father accepted on himself. Rav Huna didn't have money. He probably never had money. And the father still is accepting because according to that opinion, that the Kablan accepts on himself to pay up to Tzuba. But there is another opinion. That opinion says that if the husband has money, so then the Kablan is a real thing, because he's hoping that he doesn't have to pay. Worst comes to worst, he'll have to pay, but the odds are against it. So he's accepting it's a real thing. But if he doesn't have any money, so then he's not accepting on himself anything, because he's not accepting on himself to mamish to pay the ksuba, like such a big thing, which is like obviously going to come if they get divorced, but that's such a big debt that's going to come, and he was just doing it to get them married.
Oh.
So what do we say? How can we now go and start using this against the father? We can answer this. Mia Havale, really Rav Huna had a lot of money, but he lost it. He invested in the wrong thing. Or we could say that a father always guarantees his son. That's different. Itmar, because we have a statement like this. When you have a regular guarantee on the ksuba, that's just a formality to get them married. Kablan, the Baal Chayiv, but if there's a kablan on a debt, on a regular debt, not a marriage, everyone agrees that there is a lien on him. He does owe the money, the kablan. Kablan the ksuba va'ariv the Baal Chayiv pligi. A kablan on the ksuba and a regular guarantor on a regular debt. So that's a machlekes. Mar savar yislei nichse l'leiv mishtabed. One opinion holds that if the borrower has money, so then the person is actually signing, thinking that he's not going to have to pay it, but he is committing, but if he doesn't have any money, loy mishtabed, then he's not committing. He's just trying to get the transaction done, but he's not really committing. Mar Savar, the other opinion holds, bein slay, bein leslay, mishtabed. It doesn't matter. Either way, he signed, or not signed, because he didn't do that, but he agreed to be a guarantor. He has to pay it. The halacha is, let's take a look. The kulu mishtabed. That's what he's supposed to say. That's what the Bach says. By all of these things, he commits himself. Bar, you have to take out that line. Bar miyarav de ksuba, except for a guarantor and a ksuba. Afagav dislei labal, that even if the husband is wealthy, lay mishtabed, the arav the ksuba doesn't commit himself. My taima mitzvah david vladmidi chasra. He was just performing a mitzvah, get them married, but he wasn't really. What he meant was like this. Who's he guaranteeing? He's guaranteeing the kala that she's going to get a ksuba if he divorces her. But he knows that the kala wants to be married anyway, whether she's going to get a ksuba or not. She doesn't want to be single. So tabla mesav tandu, she needs company of a husband. So he's just getting her married and just saying, yeah, so don't worry, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. But he knows that she wants the marriage more than she wants. It's not like I never would have gotten into this if I known he would have. She's agreeing to the marriage because of the marriage. This is just the formality to smooth things by.
These cases it would be a binding with a signature. It wouldn't be like a smart because he thought that.
He'll bring up the smachta part. Here we were using logic, the opposite of a smachta. Here we were saying that if he has money, then he's committing to it because he's thinking that he's really not going to have to pay it, which is the logic of an asmachta, which should really say that he shouldn't have to. But we're saying that I'm committing to it because I think that I'm not going to have to pay it, and if I do, then I'll agree. That's the opposite is I'm never committing to this. This is just to get them married when he doesn't have money, right? It's the opposite logic of the asmachta. Yeah, it goes both ways. Okay. Have a good day, everyone.
It sounds similar to